Hello everyone. Last week we began the story of Edge of Night, in which the Dark Lady, she feels like she's done. Her mission of claiming vengeance upon Arthas, that is complete, and she throws herself from the top of Icecrown to find her eternal fate waiting for her. That is where we'll pick off, so I hope you'll enjoy.
As if in a dream, the heart of Lordaeron's undead army crashed forward. Shouted commands were strangely muted. The heavy cavalry poured through the breach, skeletal hooves somehow finding purchase on the wrecked remains of the wall. The Forsaken struggled to squeeze through, the gap sometimes as narrow as 4 abreast. Then the defenders' artillery fired with a dull echoing crack. Man and horse burst into dust and gore where the shells landed. Musket fire erupted like the tapping of distant drums. Row after row went down. But these veterans had lived through the horrors of Icecrown. They poured through, unrelenting, in order to give fight to the defenders beyond. The second wave arrived, hurling grapples to the wall top as oil poured down. All at once, the front burst into flame. Still, the gunfire peppered them. Still, the Forsaken charged. Some reached the wall top, only to be cut down. The defenders weren't human. Those rapid lupine animals that had been lurking around Silverpine had actually been organized into a fighting force. Where guns and swords failed, tooth and claw tore into the undead army. The Forsaken surged again. Weapons spattered with blood and washed in rainwater. The figures who fought were grey in the mist, their cries somehow silent echoes as they were hacked apart. By now, the defenders were reeling. They had killed so many. Could anything be left? The first wave of orcs caught the Gilneans by surprise. Horde forces rushed forward over a carpet of corpses, lust for victory in their eyes and throats. Everything was silent now, and then it was gone. In its place stood the bulwark, the half-finished fortifications that lined Lordaeron's border with what had become known as the Plague Lands. Master Apothecary Leiden was there, his left arm missing and an enormous gash across his face. He spoke urgently to his people, but no sound came out. He was orchestrating a last-minute defense at the bulwark, but a little to work with. The heart of the Forsaken army had been sacrificed at Gilneas. What little remained faced off against an organized force of humans and dwarves marching west, fresh from its victory at Anderhall. The ragged force that remained at the bulwark made little hope of victory. The rest of the horde was nowhere in sight. This isn't real, Sylvanas realized, suddenly aware of her own consciousness, observing these ghostly events as they unfolded. She was dead. She could feel it, but her spirit was being held in limbo. What is this? The last thing she remembered was falling to her demise. These visions, they were like memories of events that hadn't yet happened. Where did they come from? Where was she now? The capital was suddenly under siege. King Rin stood beyond the burning remains of the Zeppelin Tower, drawing diagrams of the Undercity for his generals. He had stormed the city before. He was confident of victory. Within the city walls, bonfires raged. Sylvanas seethed. The Alliance was already burning the corpses. No, wait. She tried to make sense out of the clouded vision. The few Forsaken who remain are throwing themselves into the bonfires, she realized, rather than facing the executioners.
This isn't real,
Sylvanas announced. Were her people really so weak? No! Gerars had all but murdered the best of her troops in his own wasteful campaigns. The Forsaken leadership had been gutted. That's what these visions showed. The mist closed up completely as the future became indistinct. Sylvanas could no longer feel her body. She was floating in some kind of limbo. She realized she could see herself and held up her hand in silent awe. Her flesh was a golden pink again, firm and luminous as it had been in life. But she was not alone here. With a gasp, she saw that she was surrounded. 9 warrior women drifted in a circle around her, and their beauty outshone even hers. The Valkyr appeared as they had in life. Some had raven dark hair that fell around tan faces and jewel-like blue eyes. Others had blonde manes, the pale, brilliant color of the sun shining on snow. Their faces were soft, but their jaws hard. Their arms were smooth and muscled, their thighs wide and strong. Each held a different weapon. A spear, a halberd, a great 2-handed claymore that stretched from chin to ground in a shimmering swath of polished steel. Each was the greatest warrior of her generation. They were all just like me, Sylvanas saw. Vain, victorious, and proud,
Yes, we were.
said the blonde Valkyr, armed with the claymore, answering Sylvanas as if she'd spoken aloud. Her voice was rich and full.
I am Anhild the Caller. These are my sister battle maidens, and we are the only 9 who remain. We served the warriors of the North in life, and chose to continue our service in death.
To serve the Lich King.
The vision of Anhild rankled.
Did you choose to serve the Lich King?
What is this? What are these visions?
Sylvanas demanded.
Visions of the future. Every life leaves a wake in its passing. This is yours.
It doesn't take a crystal ball to see Hellscream squandering the Horde's resources, tearing it apart in his lust for conquest.
Sylvanas felt the old anger welling up again, but couldn't feel her body respond. She couldn't feel anything.
Where have you taken me? I should be dead.
You are.
Said the other Valkyr, her hair the color of coal.
I've tasted oblivion before. You're keeping me in limbo. Why?
Anhild remained patient, her voice soothing and measured.
To show you the consequences of your passing, and to offer you a choice.
I've made my choice.
Your people will perish!
Said the dark-haired Valkyr. She'd clearly been the youngest of the battle maidens in life, and was now the most impatient in her own death. Sylvanas thought about her people. They had come far from their decimated origins, the yearning, confused mob of fresh corpses huddled about the ruins of Lordaeron's wrecked capital. The Forsaken were truly a nation now. A fetid, gore-caked, hideous mass of lifeless husks, skilled in combat, devastating with the arcane arts, and unhindered by fetters of morality. They'd been honed into the perfect weapon. Her weapon, and they had struck the killing blow for which she had built them. She cared nothing for their fates.
Let them perish! I am finished with them!
Anhild raised a hand to quiet her younger sister in arms.
Hush, Agatha. She does not know. She must see more.
The Valkyr leader directed her luminous green eyes to Sylvanas, their edges rimmed with sadness.
Sylvanas Windrunner, the oblivion you seek is yours. We will not stop you.
Anhild's eyes closed, and at once the figures vanished into their faceless spectral forms. Then Sylvanas felt herself being pulled away. Her senses reeling, everything disappeared and time stopped.
She is lost!
The rain continued, unrelenting, turning the ground before the Gilnean wall into a swamp. As Garrosh inspected the ranks of the Forsaken, the paws of his great warwolf sank into the muck. Rainwater dribbled from his face and steamed from the top of his doubly shaved head.
The Gilneans cower behind their high stone walls!
The warchief called out, his deep voice booming over the din of rain and thunder.
You, citizens of Lordaeron, you know their history. When their human allies needed them, what did they do? They walled up and hid!
Swords clanged against shields. Not all Forsaken clung to the living memories, but those who did held no love for the kingdom that had turned its back to the world in its most desperate hours. Garrosh continued, his head high as the words filled the air.
They live in dishonor! How do you think they will fight? With honor? Ha! No! They will die the deaths of cowards and be remembered as such! But your glory today will live on in word and song!
Garrosh Hellscream turned to face the broken wall of Gilneas, drawing the legendary X-Gorhal from his back and aiming its notched blade at the shattered parapets.
Walls fall, but honor is forever!
Master Apothecary Leiden ran his bony fingers through his tangle of hair. The roar from Orc, Tarn, and Forsaken alike overwhelmed the thunder. How does he do it? Leiden wondered. My Forsaken brothers cheer for their own destruction. Leiden desperately tried to form the words, some last plea for sanity against Garrosh's plan. He tried to imagine what the Dark Lady would say, how she would tamp down his bloodlust. His jaw opened, but no words came out. A distant din erupted in the rear of the Forsaken vanguard. Garrosh spurred his warwolf to the side of the army, clearing the way for the charge.
Heroes of the Forsaken! You are the point of my spear! Lift your arms! Lift your voices, and do not stop until you lift the Horde banner from those walls!
Gorhal dropped down.
Charge!
Belay that order!
Shrieked the voice from the north. The call of the Banshee Queen carried such terrifying power and purity that even the rain itself seemed to cease falling at her commands. The sky tore open with lightning, and thunder cracked like a hammer on stone. All heads turned toward her. The Dark Lady astride her skeletal mount, her black cloak snapping with the fury of her charge, her eyes shrouded by a rain-slicked hood. As the Forsaken saw her, they lowered their weapons into the mud, bowed their heads, and knelt. Master Apothecary Leiden did not fall to his knees, although they buckled under him at the sight of the Forsaken Savior. He stuttered step forwards, his long robes dragging sloppily through the mud, and reached up to grasp her reins as the steed slowed to a halt.
Dark Lady,
He whispered, breathless with relief. Then he blinked in astonishment. Lady Sylvanas was flanked on either side by the abominable Valkyr, their shimmering bodies held aloft on translucent wings. Garrosh now approached her on the rutted roads. The kneeling, quiet Forsaken army, it stretched out around him like thousands of silent statues. Bloodlust shone in his eyes. Leiden couldn't help but shrink away. Yet Sylvanas didn't blink, nor did she remove her hood out of respect. She lifted her chin in a subtle gesture. Her words sang out, meant for Garrosh, but loud enough for all to hear.
Hellscream. Gilneas will fall, and the Horde will have its prize. But if you wish to use my people, we will do this my way.
She threw her cloak over one shoulder, revealing her dappled grey skin and the feathered festooned leather plates of her ornate-black armor.
My 3 fastest ships have already been dispatched to the southern coast to divert the attention of the Gilnean capital. And even now I gather reinforcements from Deathnell.
Apothecary Leiden cocked his head at the cryptic remark. So far as he remembered, nothing remained of Deathnell but a graveyard. More importantly, however, something had changed in his sovereign's presence. Her voice, always terrifying, now had a definitive edge, as though she spoke with the finality of gods. And what of those Valkyr who hovered mutely beside her?
my lady, where have you been?
She looked down at her subjects, and Apothecary Leiden found himself backing away, his quaking hands dropping the reins of her steed. Lady Sylvanas Windrunner tumbled in a freefall, not in the physical sense. Her body had been obliterated at the foot of Icecrown Citadel. It was her spirit that tumbled, lost like a rudderless ship in a storm. How had she gotten here? She couldn't remember. Had she been killed by Arthas? Had she committed suicide? Had she been sent to judgment by the Valkyr? Time was meaningless here. Her whole life seemed not a series of events, but a single instant, a pinpoint flash of consciousness in an infinite void. She saw only darkness, and then she felt, truly felt, for the first time in a long while. She recoiled in agony. Here she was, her spirit once again feeling whole, only to feel it suffer. To feel once more, only to feel abject pain, cold, hopelessness, fear. There were others in the darkness. Things she didn't recognize, because nothing so terrible could exist in the world of the living. Claws tore at her, but she had no mouth with which to scream. Eyes looked at her, but she couldn't look back. Regrets. She sensed a familiar presence, recognized it. The taunting voice that had once held her in its grasp. Arthas? Arthas Menethil here? His essence rushed to her, desperate, then shrank away in horrified recognition. The boy who would be Lich King. Just a scared little blonde child, reaping the aftermath of a lifetime of mistakes. If any part of Sylvanas' soul were not at that moment torn and tormented, she might have even felt for the first time the slightest glimmer of pity for him. In the grand landscape of all the world's suffering and all the evils of the infinite, the Lich King was insignificant. Now the others had her, surrounded her, gleeful, tormenting, tearing at her consciousness, delighting in her suffering.
Give in to your fear. You have failed those who needed you. You will be alone in the end.
this was to be your eternity. The endless void, the dark, unknown realm of anguish. Was it a moment or a lifetime before a single thread of light broke through the darkness? Then they came to her, their arms extended. The 9 Valkyr, impossibly beautiful after this dark place, enshrouding Sylvanas in a single halo of light. She felt small and naked, coiled into herself. When she found her voice again, it only sobbed. Sylvanas Windrunner was broken, yet still the Valkyr did not judge.
Lady Sylvanas, we need you.
Enhild said, her voice soothing. She touched the side of the elven ranger's face.
What? What do you want?
We are bound to the will of the dormant Lich King, imprisoned atop Icecrown, possibly for eternity. We hunger for our freedom, as you once hungered for yours.
Enhild knelt beside Sylvanas, the other Valkyr clustering around the pair of them, arms linked.
We need a vessel, one like us, a sister of war, strong, who understands life and death, who has seen the light and the dark, someone worthy of power over life and death. We need you,
repeated Agatha, her black hair floating freely in the light.
My sisters will be free of the Lich King forever, but their souls will be bound to yours. Sylvanas Windrunner, Dark Lady, Queen of the Forsaken, you may walk with the living again through the sisterhood of the Valkyr. As long as they live, so too shall you. Freedom, life, and power over death. This is our pact. Do you accept our gift?
Sylvanas answered, but not right away. The lurking oblivion filled her with terror. Even now, she felt the tempest raged around her. This was her only way out, but she didn't want to give her assent out of fear. She waited until she felt something more. A fellowship, a sisterhood. Sisters, separate, they were all trapped, but together they were free, and with them she could postpone her fates.
Yes, we have a pact.
Enhild nodded grimly, then rose up, her features blurred and ghostly.
The pact is made, Sylvanas Windrunner. My sisters are yours, and you hold sway over life and death.
A long pause, and then
I shall take your place.
the light was blinding. Then Sylvanas awoke, her body twisted but whole, the enormous column of Icecrown Citadel looming above her like a tombstone. Enhild was gone. Sylvanas was surrounded by the 8 remaining Valkyr. As long as they lived, so too would she.
Who are you to countermand my orders?
Garrosh demanded, nudging his warwolf forwards. The enormous orc now pressed his great curve into her space, coming up alongside her and glowering at her. Sylvanas did not move or shy away.
I was once like you, Garrosh.
She answered, her voice quiet and steady, loud enough only for the warchief to hear.
Those who served me were tools, arrows in my quiver.
She reached up and slowly brought down her hood, then directed a dark gaze at him. Her eyes were alive, their oversized jet-black pupils livid with rage, red embers glowing deep within. At that moment, nobody dared look Sylvanas Windrunner in the eye. Nobody but Garrosh Hellscream. What he saw was a great black void, an infinite darkness. There was fear in those eyes, but also something else. Something that terrified even the great warchief. His wolf began to edge away instinctively.
Garrosh Hellscream, I've walked the realms of the dead. I have seen the infinite dark. Nothing you say or do could possibly frighten me.
The army of undead that surrounded and protected the Dark Lady was still hers, body and soul. But they were no longer arrows in her quiver. Not anymore. They were her bulwark against the infinite. They were to be used wisely. And no fool orc would squander them while she still walked the world of the living. The warchief sheathed his axe onto his back, his mount sidling away from hers. After a long moment, he finally tore his gaze from those eyes.
Very well, Dark Lady.
He conceded loud enough for all to hear.
We will take Gilneas your way.
He spurred his mount onwards and ambled through the mud toward his own troops.
But I will be watching you.
he told himself.
The eyes of Hellscream are upon you more than any other.
When I saw the end montage for the first time, it seriously gave me goosebumps. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Quel'Thelas did such an amazing job. She has more machinima up on her channel. During the story of Jaina, I used quite a few of them, and her story of the Broth family, it's still one of my favorites. Charm, lend her voice for the Dark Lady, but uses it more than just voice acting. Her enchanting songs can be found on her channel, and she was the one that moved so many of you to tears during the burning of Teldrassil questline. Zarkput is the one who portrayed Garrosh Hellscream, and man did he nail it. Those of you that have been with the channel for quite a while, you might remember his small rendition of Gallywix. Hopefully we'll hear a lot more from him in the future. Nora Sunstrider lent her voice for the Valkyrie Battle Maidens and does her own machinima videos, but also sharing adventures in WoW on stream. Same can be said for Mukluk, who played Apothecary Leiden. His last video on his channel, that's about a year ago now, so you know, we're about set for a new one. But jokes aside, Mukluk, he works on a whole lot of other projects, and of course, can be found over at Twitch. Last but not least, Master Vertex, thank you ever so kindly for helping bring this story to life. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about time to wrap up this video. Now you know what pushed Sylvanas into keep on fighting after Wrath of the Lich King, and what motivates her even to this day. Is the hell that she saw a reality? Her destiny? Or is there more at play? Did the Valkyr impose these visions upon her? Or perhaps even the old gods themselves? Who were the spirits that whispered her name and made a warchief? A lot of cool things that they could play around with in Battle for Azeroth. But for now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time guys, see ya!